Welcome to another episode of the Edfield Law Podcast. This is your everyday law podcast. Um, During our previous episode, we spoke about employment relationship and we slightly touched on the termination, but you'd realize that termination when it comes to employment relationships is a hot area and is something that affects our day-to-day livelihoods. So we decided to do another whole episode to specifically zone in on termination. So today's topic is on termination, and I am here with Albi, Prince, and Eunice. Are you guys fine?
We're fine.
Are you fine?
Yeah,
Are you ready to terminate some contracts? I'll be ahead you've been terminating employment
Me.
contracts a lot.
No,
Every
that's
small
not
thing
true.
you say they should go home.
Oh no, that's not true. That's not true.
Okay, right. So we realized that in a work or in a working environment, sometimes certain things would happen. In your mind, you've been working with someone under an employment relationship for say 5 years. You wake up one morning and then the person is just notifying you that he does not want to work with you anymore. Under such circumstances, would you deem it fair? Would you deem it unfair?
Um, well, it depends on what it is. Usually for most employment contracts, there's a termination clause. Or for every
Okay.
employment contract, there should be a termination clause.
Okay.
And the termination clause will tell you how the termination should be done. Termination can either be done by the employer or the employee. So the employee can decide that I don't want to work for you anymore. It's a free world. You can't hold me down. There's something that's going on that I don't like. The person does not even need to tell you the reasons why they are leaving. Okay, so the termination clause we usually say maybe you can terminate by giving 1 month's notice or 2 months' notice or whatever it is, or the salary in lieu of the notice, which means that if I plan to leave my workplace the next month, exactly a month from today, I should give, I should notify the employer today.
Yeah.
If I want to leave immediately, then I pay the employer 1 month of my salary.
Yeah.
So if the employer hasn't paid me yet, then I forfeit it. If he has already paid, then I return and it goes
Yeah.
both ways. For the employer too, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
They're supposed to give you 1 month's notice. If they want to terminate immediately, then they pay you a month's salary
Yeah.
instead of giving you the notice. So it depends. For such a situation, you don't need to give a reason. Usually, the provision will say you can terminate at any time.
Yeah.
For then they give the duration or the duration in lieu of the notice, the salary in lieu of the notice. But if the employer decides to give a reason, so you are
Okay.
there and they notify you that you have misconducted yourself, or they write a letter and tell you that okay, when you came here, you were working like right now we think that you are incompetent or you are doing something that is against the policy of the, then
Establishment.
they are given a reason, or
Yeah.
they tell you that um we've noticed that you are pregnant,
Yeah.
and so, or you've gotten married, so we think that you have to go because you won't have enough time. That is where they are giving the reasons, and that is what is going to determine whether it is fair or it is not fair.
Okay.
Yes.
So what are the specific circumstances which would make termination fair so that we all agree that for the sets of facts which would ordinarily arise, the single act by the employer to terminate is fair? For instance, you come to the office and then your boss comes around and you're sleeping, right? Maybe it's your habit. You come to work every day to sleep. On the other hand, too, it could be that you just have a headache on that day and you're sleeping. So zone us into what makes termination just fair. Yes.
Okay, so for termination to be fair, the law also has placed some requirements down that would amount to a fair termination. So let's say an employer, it's or a company is undergoing redundancy or trying to lay off some of its workers.
Okay.
So in that circumstance, the law will classify that as a fair termination because definitely you are going to lay off some workers. But even with that, there are some requirements that the company is required to do. But we'll not delve too much into that.
Okay, so
And
on the redundancy, you introduced a new term. What does it mean? When you
okay,
say
so for
redundancy, what does it
redundancy,
mean?
basically a company trying to lay off some of its workers. Maybe the company is introducing some major changes, or the company is undergoing restructuring, or the company is, let's say, merging with another company, and they would have to like terminate some employees' contract of employment. The law would classify that as
Okay,
redundancy.
so you'd also realize that sometimes circumstances beyond the control of the company
Exactly.
can also cause redundancy.
Exactly.
And I think the specific example would be the whole coronavirus conversation,
Exactly.
Yeah.
where companies sought to lay off workers just because they couldn't bear. There was nothing to do. There was restriction of movement. Nobody was really buying anything.
Yeah.
So then, under such circumstances, then the company can validly or fairly terminate a contract.
Yeah.
So apart from redundancy, when the employee becomes incompetent, right? Who makes that determination as to when the employee becomes incompetent? Should it be the single call of the employer, or there should be a notorious fact about the employee for everyone to accept that, okay, now you're incompetent? Because
Yeah.
mistakes do happen, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So you see, before I address that, when Albie was addressing the question you asked, she mentioned notice, and it's one of the things people are doing. I recall someone came to me that she woke up in the morning and saw a text message from her boss
Yeah.
that you've done XYZ, because of that you are fired.
Over
Yes.
phone.
My first question was, okay, do you have a contract of employment? She said, hey. Say, okay, check the termination clause. Let's see what's there.
Yeah.
Say, oh, she'll be notified.
Yeah.
Even though they did not write that she should be notified in writing.
Yeah.
I just told her that just go to work and let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Because, not to sound arrogant, it is very disrespectful
Yeah.
that you have formally engaged someone
Yeah.
and you want to terminate or you want to do away with the person's services, and it's over the phone.
Yes.
Some of them do it so that you don't get any evidence
Yeah.
that they terminated. They will just say that, oh, there was a discussion and they got angry. They've not terminated. I just told her that go back to work and let's see. Because in that circumstance, if you don't go to work, he or she will write a letter that you did not come to work.
Yeah.
And so your contract is terminated. And guess what? She went to work, met the boss. The boss just flared up a bit. She just said, I'm sorry. He said, don't do it again. She's still working
And
there.
everything was fine.
Yes. So, of course, the employer has that right to say, I'm not going to do again, right? The same way the employee has the right to say that I won't work for you again. But but it is supposed to be within certain scope. Talking about fair and unfair, normally when we say something is fair, we are looking at things that are very subjective. What do you think is just and
Just
yes, and in the eyes of the public, okay, it is moral. Oh, the person has done XYZ. Oh, give him a second chance. You didn't give the person a second chance.
sleeping at work.
Yes. So you come to see someone sleeping at work. The person is fired, and then she says that, oh, this is not fair. That is not what we are talking about. So when we talk about fair termination, it is regulated by law. The labor law or the labor act clearly specifies things that an employer will do or reasons that the employer will give whilst terminating a person's employment contract, which will be construed as fair. I think you already explained two or three of them.
Yes.
And you are asking about this competence thing.
Yeah.
You know, where we work, you know what we do?
Yeah.
That is law. Everything has to do with legal stuff. And every time as a lawyer you write, we read it like social studies. There's no law. Whatever we give to you, we say number these 1, 2, 3 to come ABC. Don't say this when you meet Kofi. He says that, oh, I met Kofi yesterday. I've already said it. So it's like all the instructions you are giving, you do contrary.
Sorry to them.
Indirectly, we are saying that you are not competent, right?
Okay.
Sometimes too, competence is construed to be ability.
Yeah.
We use our hands to do all the work we do. All of a sudden, you've gotten an accident, they've amputated everything. Now, the question is, how are you going to work? So at that point in time, you become incompetent to work. And so if the employer seeks to terminate your agreement, the law will allow it. It's just like let's say me, I always go to court, I'm supposed to talk. All of a sudden, I wake up in the morning, God forbid, I can't talk. You ask me my name, say, what am I going to do in court? Do you get it?
Sign language.
I mean, yes.
Yes.
So that is the explanation I will give as far as competence is
So,
concerned.
Now that we've set out clearly what a fair termination is, interestingly, I'd like us to talk about what unfair termination is. In a society we live in, you realize that Ghana is made up of various sects and divides. We
Yeah.
have different ethnic groups. We even have different political affiliations. A lot of times we hear stories like, okay, well, there's a new boss. The new boss belongs to this political party. So he said he doesn't, if anybody does not belong to his political party, please go home. And there was one I even saw in the news where the boss, I think there was a demonstration, and the boss sought to tell his employees
Some
that
few weeks ago.
he sought to tell his employees that if you don't know when you go for the demonstration, please go home.
You will come and meet me.
So let's set out what's unfair. I mean, must you terminate someone's employment contract just on the basis of ethnicity, religion, creed, political affiliations?
You see, so for the example you gave, it is your right to partake in demonstrations.
Yeah.
You are also not supposed to discriminate against someone because of their race, their color, their ethnic group. These are even constitutional
Yeah.
rights. They are not things that, ordinary things. They are constitutional rights. So you cannot terminate someone's employment because the person doesn't belong to your ethnic group. Your ethnic group has nothing to do with, unless I'm even trying to imagine what kind of employment would you be doing that you need a specific ethnic group, unless it's an association, maybe association of Achim.
Exactly.
Let me use my association of Achim lawyers.
Yeah.
If you are not an Achim lawyer, you
Then
can,
you
but that's
can't.
not even an employment. It's an association.
Yeah.
So unless maybe the secretary or the person, even for that kind of association, you don't need the cleaner to be an Achim person.
Yeah.
You get it.
Yes.
So it is something that you cannot do. It will definitely be unfair termination.
And just to add to what Albi said, you see, the law also places some statutory requirements, and emphasis should be the only reason, because per the explanation Albi was given, as an employer, you just wake up and you are saying that, oh, maybe the only reason why I'm terminating, let's say, Prince's employment contract is because Prince is a Bono guy, right? That one would amount to unfair termination. Or I'll be in the course of a work gets pregnant and goes for maternity leave. They're saying I'll be skipping too long during her maternity leave. So you terminate her contract of employment based on that. It will amount to unfair
You know,
termination.
that's a very important conversation we must have. And I was going to introduce that, when it comes to discrimination in the workplace, I think we would all concede that mostly the discrimination or women are on the unfair end of the
Yes.
discrimination when it comes to issues surrounding their nature, things they cannot change. So, for example, when they start families, they get pregnant, then an employer is seeking to just lay them off just for that reason. And sometimes it's very disheartening. Just because somebody is pregnant, they try to deem them as not useful. We don't need you here. Just go. And it's very real. There are entities who specifically set out that, okay, if there are vacancies and we're employing people, 75% we consider the male gender over the female gender. And it's because of unfair reasons like this. And Albie also made an important point. Sometimes in terminating an employment relationship, you'd realize that they breach constitutional rights that is guaranteed on the part of the employees. So, for example, one instance I've noticed a lot of times is the fact that they said they've terminated your employment contract. Ask whether you've gone through the process. You haven't gone through the process. Nobody knows. But you wake up, you dress up. You see the example Prince gave.
Yeah.
Imagine the woman got to the office and they threw her out.
Yeah.
They pushed her away. They would even end up assaulting her in the process. So we have to be careful with some of these things.
To add to what you were talking about, the discrimination against women, this is not a justification. I don't want anyone to cut this portion, say that I'm justifying it. You see, most of the companies think that where women take a seat, when a woman is pregnant, she becomes weaker. So the energy that they need to work will not be the same as the energy they were using before the pregnancy, right? It's the same way they think that by law, when the person gives birth, the person has maternity leave.
Yes.
And during the maternity leave, you should understand that the person will not be coming to work, but you will pay.
Yeah.
So the question is, the person is not working. Why should I
anything.
be paying? So I know a company that has as its policy that if you are married, they will not employ you. Yes. They don't employ people who are married.
So what happens when you're not, I'm not married,
course
but
of
then in the
employment.
future,
Because
or once
yeah,
I'm
you
working
can
with
still
you,
get
I can't
pregnant.
find a love
Something
of my life.
happened. Something happened where they employed someone who was around 24, 25. So what they do is that they put people on contract, 3 months, renewable, 3 months,
Oh,
3
just
months,
to-
3 months. But they forget that if the person works continuously for 6 months, afterwards,
become-
the
yeah.
person can be construed as a permanent worker, depending on the circumstance. So they renew. So the girl had worked there for about 18 months, which means 6 months, 6 contracts that had been renewed consecutively. Then she got married. So she said she realized that her boss' attitude towards her had changed. Right? So the normal, hey, how are you doing? was
Coming.
not coming. So you come in, take this is the file. No, how are you thing. Then they saw her stomach growing. And the attitude was like that. Once the boss asked her, when are you going to put to bed? She was so happy that, hey, my boss is so concerned. Not knowing they were planning to replace her.
Plotting.
And then she said, oh, in 3 months' time, she gave the due date to them. And then they said, okay. The due date was 3 weeks before the expiration of her 3 months contract. And then she gave birth. They didn't renew the contract. she spent the 3 months in the house, the maternity leave, came back to work, and then she was told that someone had replaced her. I was like, how? They explained that they couldn't wait for her to be in the house for 3 months. They'll pay her, and so she came to me, and I was like, you see, it will shock you that the company is even faith based.
Oh, my
Wow.
You see,
But
And
no,
with
it's
this
even-
restriction, did it have an effect on the men too, or it was just the women?
it's just the women.
clearly
You know,
the
Hey,
we
so
don't
you,
get
the
pregnant.
men,
We get
can
first
get
babies.
married,
See, the
but
thing is, I've also heard of instances that, per what Prince is saying, the employees, their mindset is that most of the women to use it as a strategy. So
For
they'll
what?
get pregnant, go on maternity leave, come, then in no time get pregnant again.
Oh, really? Because
Someone
of
uses
maternity
pregnancy.
leave, I'll go and get pregnant.
Ah.
Really?
Oh, I've heard of instances like that.
This is not child play. Oh, 9 months.
But to a large extent, these are things you do not have real control over. And I think it's still highly unfair if you're just seeking to terminate someone's employment
Very
relationship
unfair.
just because she's a woman.
I
just
told
because
her.
she's
Yeah.
I
pregnant.
told her that see, the decision is yours. You are thinking that your contract expired
Yeah.
and they didn't renew it. But from where I sit, I see that as an unfair termination.
Yeah.
They terminated just on the basis that you had given
Yeah.
birth.
Okay.
And I will cite all the examples leading to that particular termination for any judge to put everything in a hole and construe that as an unfair
Unfair
termination. But of course, church, oh, I don't want this. Let's plead with them and see. She's still in the house. You get it. So those are real issues that people don't even know that they have remedies for.
Yeah.
They think that, oh, you can just say it is unfair, and people are construing unfairness to mean good or bad. Morality, they always associate it with morality. So
Yes.
if it's not good, let's go and plead instead of telling them that, see, this is law.
And you have
And
some
that
remedies.
exactly,
Remedies.
yes.
Unlike-
But
law.
funny enough, I came across a very strange, I don't want to say, an employer who strangely doesn't take men.
Mm.
Yes, and this is a male employer who doesn't take men
And did he have
because
some reasons?
because
First.
yes, I was surprised because I know that usually, but he doesn't take men because I think he said men are too, you people are not loyal. You're too, when you have a family.
Men rather.
Yes, because you would, society sees men to be the providers. Okay, so you won't be, there's no way you'll be satisfied with whatever.
Wouldn't that even force
No, and
us
I
to
don't
work
even
harder?
think that I think his pay was okay. But you see, people are too ambitious. You won't be loyal to him when you're supposed to
Galamsey.
be yes, you'll be doing galamsey. Legal galamsey, doing things for other people, trying to get money here and there. You won't be loyal to him. But
Yeah.
maybe the women, once they get something small,
You'll be satisfied.
they'll be satisfied. If it's flexible,
That
you
is
come
very
at 9,
demeaning.
go to 5, go home at 5, we are okay because maybe you have some support. So I found that very interesting.
Well, I don't think that is discriminatory anyway, because of the right to choose who to employ, right? But after employing the person, you can't say because
Gender-based.
no, I can decide that this work is about construction. A woman cannot.
Hey, what men can do, men can do.
I concede, but I can decide that the weight of the blocks women cannot
Have you
carry.
seen
The,
units
the,
lifting
the,
blocks?
the issue is that you have the choice. Okay, that is not debatable. However, I think we should all be inclined to start looking away from things like this because it's really unfortunate. The woman in the examples we've given could be a very competent woman.
Yeah,
She's good at what
very.
she
I
does.
know her.
Extremely.
Very,
So
very.
just give her that small protection
Yeah.
that she would need, that small care that she would need, so that she would come back and continue what she has been doing to deliver results for the company. But let's move on. Let's move on to now we've done what is fair, what is unfair. Let's quickly talk about what lawful termination is and what unlawful termination is.
So lawful, as the name suggests, termination that is acceptable by law or in law. So because the two parties, when I talk about two parties, I'm talking about the worker and the employer, came into the relationship voluntarily, they can voluntarily sit down and say that we don't want to go ahead with our relationship. It's just like a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. Okay, let's break
Sure.
up. You say okay. One will cry anyway. I don't know which of
Everyone
them,
will be fine.
but
The
because
man will
it is
cry.
mutual, it is lawful.
Yeah.
That's the first one.
Okay.
And the second one that is very lawful is where we are talking about proving misconduct.
Yeah.
It's not just misconduct. That is what people are always hiding behind. You say, oh, misconduct. And so you say you've misconducted yourself, you are fired.
There must be some basis to the
Yes.
misconduct.
So when we say proving misconduct, the misconduct you are alleging to have happened or to have been engaged in should be one that has been tested. So how do you prove it? You call the person who has done that particular act you are complaining about. Tell the person that this is what you've done. And then give the person the opportunity to respond. I have read a case where a man working for an aluminium company,
Yeah.
he was called to the office that some roofing sheets had gotten missing. About 20 packets,
Yeah.
they were missing. And because he was a supervisor, they were asking him why it is missing. He said he didn't know where they were. Then the MD sanctioned a search. They went to his garage. They found 15 packets. Then he could not say that he bought them. He just said that, well, he doesn't know how he got them. Maybe some of his boys thought that they should come and keep. Then he was dismissed. They went into his contract and realized that in that contract, they had stated that you can dismiss him where there is a proven misconduct. So the question before the court was, the misconduct that was being talked about, was it proven? Of course, you've seen it there. But I've never seen any roofing sheet that has people's names on them. That because your name is on it, it means you bought them or you stole.
Yeah.
So that became a very serious issue. One, you did not give the person the opportunity to even defend himself.
Yeah.
What it means is that you can't say it is proven.
Yes.
I always use one example. You see, where we are sitting, if we are to go out now and you look far away, you may see maybe a tower about whatever kilometers away, and it will appear very small. But when you
get closer,
draw closer, you see that it's bigger than what you think. So what appears to be things that we see may not necessarily be the reality.
you know, a lot of times people are caught in a conflict. I, for one, would always advise that always exhaust the internal mechanisms.
Yes.
You'd realize that most of our case law on labor relations, if the court would most likely deem a termination as unlawful, one of the major reasons would be that the employer did not give the employee the right to defend himself. So it's not as though once you are being accused of something, then it means you are guilty.
Yeah.
So you must always you must always make natural justice work by establishing, maybe there's a lot of companies have their own internal disciplinary mechanisms. So hasten slowly, don't be in a rush to summarily dismiss the person.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Derek, this all comes down to you also having an idea about it. That's why it's not just a contract of employment that you should be finished with.
Yes.
At least employees' handbook and companies' policies as well.
Yeah.
So that it will inform you as to whether or not the company complied with all those internal mechanisms.
A lot of times for lawyers, if we want to sue employers, they always want us to settle, or they most likely want us to settle. And that is because they know they did not comply by the procedure and the rules that they ought to have complied with. So because of that, they would always say, oh, you guys, let's talk about it. But these are things we have to treat carefully,
Yeah.
and we have to be more intentional about. So, Eunice, Go ahead.
I was also going to add to what Prince said. So, if let's say there are legal restrictions on the person too, it can be a ground for fair termination of the person's contract of employment. Let's say one of your employees has done something and the person has been arrested and sentenced. You can't wait for the person to come out.
Yeah.
Definitely,
Yeah.
you would need to terminate the contract of employment and just.
Eunice, you really like terminating.
Hey,
Yeah,
I'm
so you
learning
realize
from
it is
Alvin.
Eunice, it's not me.
Yeah,
Me,
Eunice
I'm a
likes
very
terminating.
nice
I'm learning
person.
from.
I think if Eunice were to be the boss who saw the employee sleeping, Eunice would have fired the person.
Oh, but honestly,
Oh.
why would you come to work
Oh.
to sleep?
Maybe just a
No,
one off.
but
Maybe
I'll
just
be
a
No,
one
if
off.
it's this, if it's
Maybe you
this,
have a
maybe you
headache.
are sick, fine. But
Yeah.
every day, like if I have a CCTV every day, when I check your sleep, I can't be paying you. to
I'm
sleep.
taking
No,
a
but-
power nap.
But
I
don't
can't
you
power nap. Then it's very powerful.
don't you also think that if you are an employer
Mhm.
and you see an employee consecutively sleeping, you should also question your own self. Because you see, an employer has one as part of its duties to create a very good environment for the workers to ensure that everybody is okay. If someone is sleeping and you don't know the reason, there's something wrong with you.
Oh
As
yes,
an
Maybe
employer.
you've
definitely. You
created
need
that
to find
environment
out.
with
Yes.
AC and everything. And
Oh, well, if there's AC, it doesn't mean that you should come and sleep. But at least you should engage. There should be a situation where, or that avenue for people to come to you to tell them their problems,
yes,
or
of
to be
course,
free for you to ask them what is wrong
What
with
is
them, for
going
them
on?
to say them.
Yes. Yes.
See, so if it even goes back to unfair termination, where this really happens to the women. Someone is a predator in the office. He's always on the women.
Yeah.
The person is always hitting on women indiscriminately,
Yes.
unjustifiably. He is thinking that he owns the women there and then he will be harassing them. The person has gathered the courage to come and tell you, the boss. And because the one who is doing it is your favorite, you don't do anything
don't
about it.
take action.
In that situation, if you fire the person, that is unfair.
Yes.
If the person also stops based on that, that's what you're saying. Constructive
Constructive
dismissal
Yeah.
is the same as the unfair termination.
Yes.
And if he goes to court, normally those ones don't go to court, they go to the National Labour Commission.
Yeah.
If they are unable to resolve, they will tell you that, see, reinstate the person or pay compensation. And you will pay. So we have to really be careful
About
of yes, those things.
we've come to the end of today's episode. In today's episode, some of the things we've brought out or we've brought to light are that as employers, we must be very careful when it comes to how we terminate employment relationships. Every time you're in doubt, the truth is just get a lawyer and the lawyer would run you through the processes. Don't just go and do anything you do not understand so that there's fairness, so that the law actually operates and the law works. And I'd like to thank my guest once again. Thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate. And I'll see you on the next episode. Keep watching the Edfield Law podcast. Subscribe to all our social media. The handles are on the screen. Thank you very much.